Hi, everybody, and all of you around the world, especially those of you who are really following our Canadian Football League in India. It's awesome to have people from around the world watching a sport that they can't come to personally, and we're glad to bring you some of the information that goes there and keep you up to date. All right, I'm Candid Stanisci. This is CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Sports, Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. And here we are. David Morassutti's on his way. He's having a couple of computer issues, so we'll take advantage of that to spend a little more time with Mark Stephen, our special guest. Mark, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for coming on the program.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to believe how close the football season is. I was up at camp today, and it's in case of Calgary and Edmonton, they start the season first. So I guess 1 week from right now, I'll just be getting home from the first game of the preseason.
Let me introduce you to the folks that may be seeing you for the first time. This is your 10th anniversary for induction into the Canadian
Oh
Football
yeah,
Hall
yeah,
of Fame.
very very exciting. Yeah, I was in Regina in 2013. Big honor for sure.
Yeah, and you that was the third year in a row that the home team won the Grey Cup.
I know that was that's the Rough Riders' greatest moment in their history was winning the Grey Cup and winning at home and winning it convincingly. It was a huge moment for them, very exciting. I didn't have any particular interest one way or the other, but the celebration was really cool. It was really neat to be around. So that's for sure.
Now, that was a mere pause in your life. Most of your life was spent surrounding Calgary and Calgary sports, and obviously the Calgary Stampeders. But I wanted to start on the question of something that we're all happy. Any sports fan anywhere in Canada, especially Canadian Football League fans, always like to hear good news happening into a Canadian Football League city. And you have been given a lot of great news there. There's finally going to be an update for Calgary's all Calgary sports. Basically, it's going to be one area for everything. Please help us understand what's going on.
Well, yeah, the city of Calgary, the province have come together, and the parent company of the Calgary Flames, which also owns the Stampeders, have come together on a deal for a new and event center. It's very, very close to the current Saddle Dome. That's an easy walk across the street. It's not only an arena, although they go to great lengths to call that an event center because they don't want it to sound like a hockey arena that they're building, which is basically what it is. But nonetheless, it's going to be part of the Stampede, which is located in that part of the city. Some renovations and upgrades they want to do with their land, and also some changes to the transport system here. So it's not just an arena; it's all part of a big deal to rejuvenate a part of the city that was, we'll just say, left to its own devices for a long time.
Well, everywhere around the world, especially in North America, people tried gravitating away from downtown. Everyone's come to drawn a conclusion finally that it should be treated like a hub.
That's what this is. Yeah, that's why it was so important to get it back on track. As I say, it wasn't strictly a hockey arena. There's going to be spaces, public spaces around the arena. The arena itself will be usable, and right next door to it too, there's a brand new renovation, or actually basically rebuilding the convention center. It's going to be the largest convention center west of Toronto. So they want to have all of this put into this one area that's been the traditional home, sort of the center of Calgary, around the Stampede grounds, which is a very integral part of the city. So it's all one big complex there. And it was really essential they get it done because a lot of plans that they had made were based on the fact there's going to be an event center, i.e., hockey arena. So there was a lot of pressure on both sides to get it done.
Yeah, they do stir the drink. Arenas in North America
Yep.
stir the drink. Wherever
Well,
they go, opportunities for business happen, right? Restaurants,
yep.
places for people to gather. If you can get 19, 20,000 people in one place, you want to keep them there as long as you can, I guess, right?
Yeah, and best example of how it rejuvenated an area is Edmonton's arena. That's not the, shall we say, the most current area of Edmonton, but around there, just exactly what you said. There's hotels, there's condos, there's all kinds of developments. There's no shortage of restaurants. They didn't exist before this place was built in Edmonton. So that's the best example I know of an arena spurring growth and spurring development, and in some cases, bringing a lot of people to downtown Edmonton.
If you're like David Morassutti and you arrived here late, we'll get you up to date. We're here with Mark Steven. He is the guy to talk sports in Calgary. Uh, and of course, Hall of Fame member in 2013. And now joining us, David Morassutti. He's working on his Hall of Fame stature. He's on the road. We don't know how close yet. We'll find out. David, welcome to the program to you as well.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Always good to have you and
Yeah,
back. Hope all is well.
nice to see you.
So we just touched we're starting with Calgary and the changing landscape for sports connoisseurism in Calgary. And Mark has expressed to us the hub nature of the new development there and how it had a bit of a, a, a hiccup, I guess, timing wise, but eventually cooler heads prevailed, and now they're going into this thing that's really important in the hub of the city.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can bring in some sort of development and have not just one thing brought in, but revamping a whole area, it's so crucial. So I only hope that you can get more of that investment in areas that are certainly really, really needed. I'm sure Mark can attest to that quite a bit.
Well, the football stadium's being left to its own devices. There's nothing new on that. It's owned by the University of Calgary. They seem to just want to do essential maintenance only, and it's just going to sit there, I guess. So that's
Like
extremely unfortunate. But I don't know what it's going to take to get movement towards a new stadium, but there isn't any right now, and don't be looking for any in the near future.
I guess that's the
Very
problem
sad.
with well, I mean, obviously private ownership, but it's always because it's a partnership with another group that doesn't see the value obviously to throwing a lot of money on a stadium. Although when you see what new stadiums in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan have done, like I
Yep,
constantly hear people say, "Oh, it's so beautiful. I would love to come here because my experience was so great." And yeah,
I agree. I agree. Just those in charge through the university don't seem to see it the same way.
I mean we've already seen the issues with universities and supporting
Uh,
football in this country
our
after.
guest our guest last week had to do with the football program that was torpedoed, ended in BC. So yeah, so we understand that college money here isn't the same as college money in the U.S.
I agree
Right?
totally. Yeah, this is they can get boosters and alumni to put tens of millions of dollars into programs. That's not the case here at
Yeah,
all. So
it's
just a
different.
difference.
Well, let's talk about the important thing. I think is that it might set an example or a trend or might open an opportunity. Hopefully, the biggest thing I think with football and the Canadian Football League, the biggest challenge, Mark, and of course, is stadiums. For example, I think Halifax would have already been in the Canadian Football League if it wasn't for the problem being football and 10 games a year and trying to build a stadium based on 10 sets of tickets. Just it's difficult. The math just doesn't make sense.
Well, I wonder if there was a way to. They've got a soccer team
Yep.
in the Canadian League. They've got university football around there. I hear you, but be creative about it. And I am surprised that they didn't go with what they did in Vancouver, which is a temporary functional stadium when they were turfed from BC Place a few years ago as they were going under renovation. So once you get the stadium there, I think it would be a real magnet and a lot of development, and maybe a full stadium would come in. But I am surprised it stalled this long. It's one of those never-ending debates the CFL has. I just hope they get around to it.
Well, the commissioner, or at least the Canadian Football League through the commissioner, has pointed out that they're more than willing to bring in a new franchise using temporary seating. So it's not something now that isn't on the horizon when it comes to the Canadian Football League specter on bringing in a new team. So we know that's a possibility and it's acceptable.
I agree. I think it'd be wonderful. I think, example one, there's many examples of why a 10th team would work. But, on holiday Monday, Calgary and Edmonton are forced to play a game after being in camp just 7 days. And that's because there's an odd number of games that they have to fix in and squeeze in. It's far from ideal, but every year, especially here in the West, 2 teams are going to get that because you've got an odd number of teams trying to play 2 games each. So again, it's not ideal, but there's nothing they can do until a 10th team is in.
It helps with the schedule as well because then
Totally.
you end up with 2 bye teams.
Yep, totally. It's so many things would come so easy if they had a 10th team. Those are some of them, and increased opportunities for Canadian players too. But here we are, still talking about it.
David, you got something to add to that?
No, I mean we've been being. I mean, how many times have we beat this drum? I'm sure. It just goes to show just how important it is to also just bring football to the communities, right? Like, it feels like if you ask anybody out east, they probably feel a little left out that they're the ones that don't get, to have a professional football team, right? Like, if you look and see how they do professional lacrosse there, minor league hockey, and even the soccer team, they'll support it because it's theirs. That's their team, right? I'm sure they would support a football team. I do think that. I think there's pride in those, in that area, and it's also it gets so much foot traffic in the summertime from travelers and tourists. You can't tell me that none of them would consider, hey, you know what? There's a football game on tonight. Let's go and watch a football game out east. It would be the best. It would just revamp that area, the culture of that area, and it can show off the culture of that area as well if you have a team out there.
And they do.
Totally.
And they do love
That'd be
football
wonderful.
there. They love football.
Yeah,
They have a
it'd be
history.
wonderful, and opportunities for Atlantic-based players, and just so many things. And Halifax probably feels a little out of the mainstream at times. It's just out there, but we'll see. I hope it comes to pass. I hope the talking stops and the digging begins.
Well, before the pandemic, they were talking about temporary seating. That was a subject matter that they had going. It looked like it might be headed in the right direction, and the pandemic happened. So whatever. But I want to put the pandemic behind me, so we'll stop talking about that. And let's talk about something. Again, we're talking about change, whether it be change from 9 to 10 teams, whether it's change because Calgary's stadium or their complex that they're going to build is going to create a change on the landscape. There's a change in Calgary that hasn't happened in a very long time. This is going to be the first year in a few years. The guy named Bo Levi Mitchell won't be going to camp with the Calgary Stampeders. How is that flying?
Well, still, it is a bit shocking to see not only that he's not there, but you see the social media feeds coming out of Hamilton, and there he is with a black helmet on and standing in front of pipe and drape behind him with the Ticats logo on it. So it's a bit jarring, but I think there's enough time. I mean, they made a change in the midseason last year, and they've had time, and the fans had a chance to say farewell to him. In Calgary's last home game, they put him on the field for the last few minutes. So, it's emotional. I'm not going to kid anybody. And one unfortunate part in the CFL schedule is Hamilton doesn't come here this year. So you have to wait another year to salute Bo and give him the salute that he has richly earned.
Yeah, I was I remember when Frank and I were going through the schedule, I said, like, the fact that you knew that Bo Levi Mitchell, like, before, I think it was before the schedule even came out, you try to figure out a way to get them.
Yeah.
I think one of the best games of the season was Hamilton in Calgary. Like, that was a really good game. And yet
Very good.
they
Yeah.
felt like, nah, we're not going to do that. Like, these teams should have no reason why they can't play each other in each stadium at least once, considering.
Well, and the Argos and Hamilton, I believe, play 4 times again. I mean, I get it to a point,
He
but
played 4 times in 5 weeks.
I know.
That remains the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, the players, nobody liked that situation, and I still don't get why they would do that.
Well, they decided to travel less. That's one of the issues, and they got rid of the almost the attempt to play everybody at home and away. They got rid of that a couple of years ago. I think because of travel costs, so they decided to do that. And this is one of the downsides of it, is that the unpredictability of a game that people would look forward to that won't happen. And this is just one of those cases.
Yep, not ideal. We have Saskatchewan here twice and Winnipeg here twice, so that's how it's made up. So is that good or bad? Saskatchewan's a tremendous draw here, and Winnipeg's a Grey Cup champion. So maybe it'll work out, but this specific year, Hamilton here would have been just off the charts.
Well, it helps in the crossover.
It does. No, it can.
Do whatever
And
you
I,
can to
yeah,
help the East. Play each other more. Thank
yeah,
you very much. Yes. That's what
yeah.
some
Oh,
people
good.
might
We'll see.
suggest. Well, let's talk about Calgary, the players that are left there, the team that's left there. You got to think that there's got to be some extra energy going there because with the absence of Bo Levi Mitchell, that's a lot of time on the microphone for a lot of other players. And now you're going to have a quarterback who was deemed the guy. You're going to get a chance to see how well he'll stand up in that position. It's not easy to be the face of the franchise.
No question, and a lot on Jake Mayer. But again, he's had a little of time to acclimatize himself to it. But it's different. You're right. There's no experienced veteran standing on the sidelines behind him. He is the experienced veteran, and he's going to play. I have a lot of faith in him, a lot of confidence. What the organization has said is that as long as he plays to his capacity, that will make a big difference. Give the ball off to what I think is the best ground game in the league. There's a series of other great receivers. Get Reggie Begelton involved more, and Luther Canavanu, a big tall target, went to college at York. Maybe he has a breakout season. So, and it was a great offensive line last year. Don't lose sight of the fact they only gave up 17 sacks all year. And, there was one change, player going to the NFL, Julian Good Jones, but it remains a very good team. And, I think they're certainly going to be in the mix. I would say a 12-6 record is very, very reasonable. Whether that's good for first, second, third, I don't know, but I think they'll have a very good season.
I mean, it's a similar situation to kind of here in Toronto where there are no veterans at the quarterback position. I was actually at training camp this morning out in Guelph, and you got a different sense of of how the inexperienced quarterback situation. Now it's like you got to get all these guys kind of in the mix here and not just focus on the starter. Has that been the case in Calgary where it's like Jake Maris is getting most of the top reps and then whoever's behind him will sprinkle in a little bit? How's that been working?
Exactly. There's three other candidates, and they're working them behind Jake Mayer. But Jake Mayer's the guy. He's getting the bulk of the work. Tommy Stevens, a big, tall, 6'6" quarterback, was here last year. He's doing well, but he's going to be pushed. There's a couple of players, one from Utah State, one from Charlotte, that are going to give them a push, and they won't commit to a number two quarterback as of this minute. Maybe that'll change with the preseason games, but they don't have a set number two right now.
Number two, on any team, is not exactly how shall I put this? There is no template for a number two because in the CFL, the number two, some teams refer to that as the guy that's going to get the short yardage. And then there's the number two that's actually going to play the game, the backup. But because the Canadian Football League only allows two quarterbacks, you have to make a decision before the game what kind of quarterback you want to have as a backup. How do you feel about the idea of bringing in a third quarterback?
Fine with me. Wouldn't bother me in the slightest. Get the guy some experience, get him on the roster and that, and an opportunity. I mean, the starter is one guy, but it depends how you look at number two. Is that the backup quarterback, or is it the starter in waiting? And there's a
Exactly.
big difference in my mind.
I agree
There's
with
a
you.
big
That's
difference,
that's my
and
belief.
that's how you got to decide how you want to approach it and how you want to structure that position. Is it a development position? I don't know. I don't know. Each team's circumstances would dictate that, but here it's always been a starter in waiting. That's the difference. It's neither good nor bad, just the way it's been.
And yeah, I mean, we were having I actually was having this discussion about whether the CFL should bring or bring back the three quarterback rule. I just think when you with injuries and how they continue to be unpredictable, I just think there's no downside really
I'm with you.
because then teams don't need to put in four running backs. They don't need to put in three fullbacks. Like they can they have some flexibility still with the roster to do it. And in some ways, if you had a Canadian quarterback, you would have maybe a little bit of incentive to play that third quarterback if he was Canadian too. I think they got to incentivize that idea of also having the third quarterback in some way. But I think a lot of teams, a lot of coaches would be feeling at ease if they could get that third guy in there.
I'm with you, and let them Let him get regular work and be part of the team. I'm with you totally.
Well, it would be I think it's a logical next step when you consider the rule change they made last year and having those plays in the backfield with two quarterbacks in them.
Hmm. And it'll work for some teams.
Right?
Some teams have the ability. I mean, Calgary has a former York quarterback in their backfield. They sometimes Colton Hunchak, so he can roll out and throw. Maybe some other teams have that, like Edmonton. They have Loxley, who's a quarterback slash receiver. So yeah, there are some alternatives there that you can throw a little bit of a wrinkle at your opponent.
Would have been great 10 years ago when Sinopoli came in.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, they liked him. They liked everything, but his accuracy, it just wasn't there. They thought it just didn't translate to the pro level, and they made a great call to shift him to a receiver, and then Ottawa called it free agency, so he went home.
Another change that Calgary made is Dickinson's now the GM as well. How is he looking from the outside to you?
Fine. It's strictly just turning the page from John Huffnagel to him. I mean, they'd worked so closely together for so many years. And in Dave's case, he's coming into a great situation. I mean, so often when there's a new general manager, it's because the prior regime left a bit of a smoldering heap there, but that's not the case here. He just picks it right up. He's been involved. They've been tutoring him, so really no change whatsoever, and that's a hallmark of the consistency the Stampeders is showing. John Huffnagel is around. He's still a player personnel consultant, and his track record says that when he knows a player's suited for the Canadian Football League, you better listen because he's got a tremendous track record.
Now, when it comes to, we've seen how it has happened in Hamilton with, Alonso Starnauer now taking on that responsibility. Is there that concern at all where, maybe too much for one person to have all that autonomy in those situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know what you're saying because it's the old saying is you encourage the guy and tell him he's the greatest in July, and then in January you gotta say, well, you didn't do that much. We can't give you that much money. So it's a dual role. I don't want to pretend it's easy. It's rarely been done successfully. I mean, I guess you'd have to say, Wally Buono is one of those that was able to pull it off for a long time, but it's tough. Has it increased his workload? Yeah, mostly in January and February for Dave with a lot more work. I mean, he does have a lot of people around too. The front office remains largely intact, so there's a lot of people there. But no, it's a big workload. Let's not kid anyone. It's a demanding job. Each one of them by themselves is a demanding job. Never mind putting the two of them together. So let's see how Dave does with it. So far, the results are good. He likes what he's doing. He's got a lot of people he can work with, and we'll see how it goes because you're right. Coaching a team and paying him are two separate functions and not always headed in the same direction.
Yeah, so the relationship between him and the players this year around compared to last year may change a
Mhm.
little bit, right?
Well, yeah, it could change indeed for sure. Dave has to learn some of the subtleties of the CBA and talking to different agents and that. I'm not saying he can't learn it, but he does have to learn it to figure out how to move the team forward and keep the players you want to keep.
But it's also the two hats, can you
Oh
put
yeah,
one on top of the other? Because that's the confusion I think that can happen because there's an advantage to only being the coach and only being the general manager, in my opinion.
I'm with you. It's
There's an
it's
advantage.
not an easy act to do. There's a reason, Orlando Steinhauer has about 14 titles. Chris Jones does it as well, and Dave Dickinson. Those are the guys that have the dual responsibility in the CFL. Not easy. I got to say for the exact reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, like, especially you look at Hamilton and probably Edmonton as well, with them getting so many, taking so many of the positions, there seem to be still as many coaches on the staff when it comes to the cap in Hamilton and probably in Calgary.
Yeah, where'd that staff suddenly arrive? All these guys just seem to run out from the tunnel unexpected, and some very, very experienced guys. Like, where'd Scott Milanovich come from all of a sudden?
That's that to me, we were pondering that as well because, well, Barker left Toronto
Yep.
to go back to TV. He was there in Hamilton and then he came to Toronto. And we've got these guys that are real tall foreheads when it comes to Canadian football who obviously have a lot to offer. But they all have to make some sort of cap sense. It boggles my mind on how they could do it. That's all. I just But I know David does too. We had a conversation last week about this. Is how do they? The management cap is. I know it's relatively new. Um, you know, we saw a list of teams that went over the cap and they paid fines and they did things that they didn't tell us that they did. It's an interesting situation.
Yep, they like to break out the books on how Hamilton can have that big of a staff, but somebody's figured it out, so we'll see. That's
Yeah,
all I'll say.
and it'll all work out with fines at the end of the year. And what it'll really be fine is if they can win the Grey Cup at home, which is why it's important
Yeah.
they give it a good shot.
Oh, they are. They've loaded up, so we'll see if where they are when it comes to all of this stuff. Yeah.
What do you think is Hamilton's biggest obstacle when it comes to getting that Grey Cup finally?
Well, I guess I would say, last year they seemed to lose a lot of their confidence, and that certainly won't be an issue with Bo Levi Mitchell. Their failure to commit to a ground game, although with Butler this year, that may change. I'm not sure until they got small how good their kicking was last year, and maybe that's going to change as well and continue on. So I think they're good. I just think, especially in the first half of the year, they suffered just a series of body blow losses that were really hard to recover from. I think Dane Evans, lost his confidence, became very gun shy, and I hope it bounces back for him in Vancouver. I've met him a couple of times, very upbeat, nice guy, but it wasn't working there. And those are the things I think they have to correct: is believe in themselves, put together some kind of a ground game, which was invisible last year, and ensure the kicking is better than it was last year. It wasn't great.
Not to give Bo Levi Mitchell a hard time or the Ticats a hard time, but I worry sometimes about these contracts. We saw a contract like this go to Riley, and it allowed BC to maybe slumber a little bit at certain positions because they didn't have the money. Do you see that Hamilton can deal with that with an expensive quarterback as expensive as Bo Levi Mitchell?
Well, I guess I look at the roster. They got a lot of expensive players. So I don't know about them.
Jagarrett Davis is back there.
Bingo. Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to get the full breakdown on Hamilton, where they're allocating all their money. But no, I don't think so. It's what you want to do. I mean, in the case of Calgary, they spent heavily on the offensive line. Is that good or bad? I don't know. It's just the way they decided to go with it. So um, I don't have a problem when you want to pay the quarterback, because at the end of the day, there's a salary cap, and how you choose to allocate is really your business. Yes, there's a cost somewhere else if you have a high paid quarterback, but you have to be prepared and figure it out. It's not a surprise if you're doing your job properly to figure out how to run the cap.
Yeah, their cap numbers in U.S. funds. They're paying in Canadian funds. Maybe that's what they're doing.
Don't know, but something's way out. But anyway, no, it's just what each team
Yep.
chooses to do, and if some team chooses to go here, well, by extension, there are other players that they can't sign, or maybe less experienced players. But that's what they do in the offseason, sort out
Yeah,
how
yeah.
that's going to
Well,
work.
they know they need a quarterback, and I think the experience with Dane Evans last year, I think screamed at them that they couldn't help but want experience. They learned
Yeah,
that maybe experience is what they need. They've tried inexperience based on talent, and now they're going to try experience. And
yeah.
that's and Bo Levi Mitchell brings experience. How do you feel about his game at the end of the season? He, from what I saw, he looked pretty good in the last game that he threw.
Yeah, I think he looked pretty good. I think he still got something left in him for sure. So I think it's a clear upgrade for Hamilton. I guess we'll have to see how they sort out their receiving game. Some people moved on, Dunbar and others, but we'll see. I still think they're a pretty good team, though, and I think they could win the East. Them and Toronto, I think, are going to be going toe to toe for the league lead.
Yeah, no, it is going to be something. I think the East definitely is probably going to be a lot more competitive than I think. Like it was still competitive last year.
Hmm.
I just think now you've got teams like Ottawa. I think Ottawa is going to be the team that nobody's going to see. Like they're the ones that are flying a little bit under the radar. And I think that like while everyone's talking about Hamilton and Toronto kind of battling each other, Ottawa can kind of just come out of nowhere and kind of just take advantage of those two teams kind of maybe trying to pick each other off.
Yeah,
Sure, and with the return of Mazzoli as the quarterback. Why not see how they go? And I mean, Bob Dice is going to have to create and break the losing culture there. Maybe he can. Maybe he's the guy that's the spark, and we'll see what happens because clearly they've got to pick it up after three really really rough years the last little while, and maybe he's the guy to do it. I do worry a little bit about Montreal because. When free agency opened, their ownership was in a state of flux, and it seemed like it was a one-way street out of town, and that's going to be tough.
Yeah, they did kind of stop the bleeding there, but there was some
Yeah,
bleeding before they stopped it.
yeah,
But then
yeah.
again, you can't sleep on Montreal. Montreal finds a way. The neat thing
Yep.
about the Canadian Football League is that we don't suffer from access to really good players,
Yeah. Oh, I know.
right?
That's why I kind of you start hearing all these people get all gloomy and doomy about the latest XFL, USFL, whatever they are. And I'll give the XFL credit. They survived a year, which I'll give them credit. But there's a near endless stream of players that come out. And,
Absolutely.
some of them are tremendous athletes. And just because you don't fit the classic NFL mold and have a scout's attention doesn't mean you aren't a good player. So, yeah, it's always compelling. And the CFL plays to guys' different strengths.
You talk about that, and the Argos just recently. I was at training camp today, and they brought in a running back called Deonta McMahon. They have like five running backs in camp that could all make the roster, and it's just like, well, they can't all make
Mm.
the roster. And this guy ran for over 2,000, like 2,100 yards with McNeese State. Like
Oh, wow.
really, really good, really shifty, really fast player. But it's just like there's not enough spots for all these guys, even in the Canadian Football League. And like this is where I have no problem with competing football leagues because I think there's opportunity for these guys. They just
Totally.
how many times we see a player fall through the cracks, whether that's in the NFL, and then they get that one chance in the CFL and they can turn into a star player.
No, no question. I can see that happening. And, Toronto's got an interesting backfield situation with Harris and Olet, and then maybe some other guys too, I guess it sounds like.
Yeah, like Danny Adebaboye, like they got
Yep.
a lot of depth there. I mean, Andrew Harris also being in his last year, they're gonna not exactly gonna put him in the back seat too much. They're gonna let him use up all that is left in the tank this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, to tag on your XFL story, the one thing that I've learned over the years, and we've all seen over the past years, whenever new leagues come in, there's always the people that their hair catches fire and they're worried about the Canadian Football League. And what happens? The Canadian Football League ends up looking better each time. We don't respect how good and how strong the Canadian Football League is until we see how hard it is to create a football league and remain with a schedule and having a team and having an audience base, a fan base. We forget we don't. I guess it's a typical Canadian thing. We don't appreciate ourselves. We need somebody else to tell us how great we are, or to see how bad the other folks are.
No, that's a terrific point because, the CFL, for all of its warts and some of the crazy things they do, but it does have a heritage of stability. I mean, it's been around. The Grey Cup's been awarded since the start of the 20th century. The CFL in its current form has been around since the late 50s. As I say, it's had its share of knocks and they bring many of the problems on themselves, but somehow it's found a way. And, the roots in these different cities are so deep, like in Winnipeg and places like that where the team is such a huge deal. So you're right. I think the CFL, far from wilting at the competition, actually comes out ahead. And these other leagues are good for other players and other coaches that we know to be employed and work. That's fine by me. But these are guys that are getting an opportunity to do what they like. But does it put the CFL in jeopardy? I just don't believe it.
No, I don't think so. I think every league helps football be on people's radar.
Yep,
And
I
and
agree.
like I said, it raises the credibility of the Canadian Football League when you see how they run and how they play, and the crowd, and that it is a fixture, right? And then you see
Hmm.
how the new leagues, how hard it is for them to get it going. You begin to appreciate what the Canadian Football League has. And I agree with you. The Canadian Football League has made some mistakes. Sometimes they look like they don't do things the right way, but I write it off to the fact that this is a league that doesn't mind making changes. And unfortunately, sometimes when you make changes, people don't take to them well. But I got to tell you,
Mhm.
Randy Ambrosie's been given a hard time, but under his watch, I can't complain about any of the rule changes. I really can't.
No, I agree. I think they've enhanced the quality of the game for sure. No question. Changes this year are more administrative changes, but
Yes,
overall,
definitely.
no, I think they're very good. I think I agree. The game's better.
Yeah, and what have we seen of the Grey Cup the past few years? Can you get a more exciting Grey Cup?
Great drama, yeah. This year, the game in Regina, the Toronto won, and then the one in Hamilton at Winnipeg won.
Yeah.
That was those were two amazing games for sure.
So as long as that's really ultimately that's what matters, right? It's the product on the field and the entertainment value, and people get their money's worth with the Canadian Football League. It's a very good league, and I'm proud of the fact that we have you on the show because you're central. As I said at the beginning of the show, David, you missed this. I reminded people that in 2013, Mark was inducted into the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame, so it's the 10th anniversary for that. You've called games. You've had the pleasure of calling games with some of the best players in football, not only Canadian Football League, but football in general. Tell us a little bit about your experience and some of the fun games that you did with players that you hold dear to your heart, and many of us do as well.
Oh boy, a lot of them. A lot of them. Some of the West Finals have been tremendous with Bo Levi Mitchell leading the way. John Cornish had a great game in 14. Kamar Jordan set a team record, 249 yards. He was just flying around the field. We saw Bo Levi Mitchell set multiple Calgary team records here, but Henry Burris was a lot of fun as well. He brought the team back from three fairly dark years. Joffrey Reynolds was a bruising running back that was here for many, many years and is the franchise leader. Did broadcast Alan Pitts, who, for reasons known only to him, has kind of vanished. Doesn't talk to his teammates, but doesn't change his success ratio, or Jeff Garcia's or anybody like that. So, it's hard to pin down to one or two. I guess that's the one thing I've had is in doing the Stampeders games, have generally had a team at or near the top of the standings. Not always winning the Grey Cup, of course, but always in the conversation. So that's been really good. I guess you broadcast what's in front of you, but it certainly helps when they're doing better. I got to tell you that.
Well, and it's also a matter of making sure the game gets reached to different areas as well, right? I think that's been always been the crucial element that the CFL has tried to navigate. Maybe not as successful as we had hoped.
Yeah, just it's soldiers on. It's soldiers
Yeah.
on, despite issues and knocks and issues with the team, but it and the league, it soldiers on very much.
Let's get down to the Western Division and talk about some of the concerns as someone who sits in Calgary, looking outwardly. Last year, Calgary came out of the gate slowly, predictably for some that felt, okay, this is the first year Calgary's, they're just not they're going to be in tough this year, and they started slowly early, but boy did they catch fire as the season proceeded. And in my opinion, coming out of training camp, they seemed to me to be an angry team. Like, it's like I don't know what it was, but they seemed angry to me. Was I sensing something that was untoward or not true?
I would say more determined would be the word I would use, and aggressive in pushing a point. Maybe not angry, but yeah, the standards are pretty high around here. The Stampeders felt they let a playoff game in 21 get away. So they haven't won a playoff game since 18. So let's not lose sight of that. That's a while ago for here, and they've been knocked out of the first round in 3 straight years. So that's motivating factor right there. But yeah, they got the season going. They did finish 12-6, which was tied for the second best record in the league with BC. So things did work out, but not in the playoff game for sure.
Well, and it's I mean that's obviously going to be the it brings the most pressure, I would say. Like, if they don't take that next step, right? Because they're
Yeah.
a good team. It's just getting to that next level. We know that BC. I won't talk about BC taking that step back. Saskatchewan. What are they going to be? And then Edmonton. Like, do you think that maybe Calgary, like, they see that opportunity and it's just Winnipeg, or they can't get too caught up on just one team in this West.
Right, they can't get exactly that. They can't get caught up too much on one team, although they certainly would like to haul Winnipeg back to their level. They got them 3 times, including twice here. I still Winnipeg is certainly the team to beat, let's not kid anyone. The one thing, that I would say that could hit Winnipeg is the age factor. They've got a lot of long serving veterans who are nearer to the end than the beginning. If a bunch of them at the same time suddenly slow down, that could be trouble for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the cold facts are one day it is going to happen. And that's the one thing, guys like Jefferson and Bryant and Big Hill, how many years have they played there? A long time. The 3 of them are certified Hall of Famers, but one day they're going to, hit that cliff. And once you start to go over it, it's hard to climb back up. So could it happen this year? Yes. Regardless, the time is at hand where they're going to have to start to make some, very painful and tough choices for a team that's been dominant for the last few years here.
Yeah, it's because Domino's just doesn't just deliver pizza; they also
Yeah.
fall. So
Yeah.
that's the issue, and it's not about even if by your definition that doesn't happen if everybody doesn't slow down at once. As long as a couple of players slow down, and then what happens is the temptation is to try to cover for your teammates. That's the
Hmm.
folly that a lot of teams have. If everybody doesn't do their job or can do their job, that creates a bigger problem, even though it may only start in one corner of the team. That's one of the things that
Yeah.
Calgary has done well over the years. Next man up has been a strong point and a strong suit of theirs.
Yeah, has worked out very well. Winnipeg's done a very good job. Let's not kid anyone here. They brought in Dalton Schoen. Where'd he come from? He really stepped it up. And, they got Lawler back of the receiving corps, but they're still very good. Let's not kid anyone. And until somebody takes it away from them here in the West there and across the league for that matter, they're the team to beat. I know the Argos are the Grey Cup champions, but I still put Winnipeg at, the head of the class.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will argue that point. But the thing about the Canadian Football League is they play one game for the championship. It's not the Stanley Cup
Yep.
playoffs. You don't get to make any mistakes.
Yeah, very much so.
It
And just look at the Grey Cup last year. It's Winnipeg did.
Absolutely, absolutely. The Argos did the right thing at the right time, and they won. And we've seen this over the years. What we've also seen over the years is the progress of BC with with the installation of a young Canadian quarterback who has since departed to the United States. What's your view on Canadian players who play so well in the Canadian Football League? They literally play out of their heritage.
Doesn't bother me. I mean, if he can complete passes for $100,000 a year or $2.5 million a year, I think it's pretty evident what you'd want to do. I mean, by far the biggest difference in my mind between the CFL and the NFL is the dollars. I mean, the football is still very good in both, and it's the dollars. So if you've got a chance to do it, go for it. I mean, it's there. Take a shot at it and make life changing money if indeed you are successful with it. So it doesn't bother me. The guy's got an opportunity, make the best of it. And that's apparently what young Rourke is going to do. And we'll see how he does in Jacksonville. Sometimes I do wonder the history, and I don't want to say it's universal, but the history of undrafted players jumping to the NFL is not great. Let's not kid anyone here. It's not great. And at quarterback, let's remember you're turning the keys potentially, of $1 billion franchise over to someone that maybe the owner doesn't know where he came from. But I'm just saying that. I'm not. I
Oh, I
wish
hear you.
Rourke nothing but the best, but let's not kid anyone. It's not a smooth and guaranteed path.
If all you care about is football, let's say if you're just a person who cares about football, the perspective, I don't just care about football, so I don't want any fake comment here. But I'm saying if you're somebody who only loves football, the best thing about him going to the US and playing in the NFL as a Canadian quarterback is that he will raise the profile of football within Canada. And that
Yeah.
benefits the Canadian Football League in the long term, in my opinion. So that's the way I see it. I see it as he's a seed planted for the interest of the game of football. And we're the benefactors. You, I,
Hmm.
David, and all the people who love football in Canada, if he does well in the NFL.
Certainly, no question. That'll bring a lot of attention, and there's maybe this new deal with CBS will get some people in the U.S. Tuned into the CFL as
And
well.
his going there will draw attention to the
Hmm.
CFL. We've spent it, I don't think they did it in the last 2 years, but it seemed every Super Bowl they talked about a player that, oh, he played in the CFL. and sold shoes.
Yeah.
So
No, that's okay. I wish him well. He had a tremendous season he
yeah,
had
no,
last year.
really, it is a great thing. David?
No, I think it's when you look at I mean talent is always something you teams try to bet on, potential age as well. I think that's what gives Nathan Rourke just that chance because he is a younger player. He's played in the U.S., so it's not like he's relearning a different game. So I mean, you root for it, but yeah, at the same time, yeah, it's not the whole idea of him like of saying goodbye forever. I don't think that's never really was something that I could do. I thought that he gets his chance. If he makes six, it's a great thing for the CFL. If he doesn't, it's still a great thing for the CFL because he gets to come back. So I understand people say it's a loss for the CFL, but I think there's a lot to gain with having someone of that, of that mantra to go down there because we've seen a lot of CFL players go down there. You see on prime time NFL games, the announcers will say this guy played, a few years up in the CFL, right? It gets some recognition for the league to be in those positions. And you're going to see, I think you're going to see more of that. And I think if Nathan Rourke, I mean, look, at the same time, Nathan Rourke is going to be behind a first overall pick at quarterback.
Yeah.
Unless something injury wise happens, there should be no reason why Nathan Rourke gets to play a lot of meaningful games for Jacksonville as well. But he'll get that chance to develop. And I think that's why he chose Jacksonville too.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he's healthy before they point the telescope, the microscope, and the stethoscope on him.
I guess we'll find out. Yeah, it's a big jump and a lot of pressure, and we'll see how he handles it. He handled the pressure in Vancouver very well, so
Yeah.
let's see how he does in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and the injury that he had is one that requires a lot of recovery time. So
Yeah.
hopefully he respects that and doesn't hurt his long-term gain, or good with a short-term, opportunity or an idea that he thinks is okay. I hope he starts healthy. Want to see that. That's the most important thing I think that he has to bring.
Lisfranc surgery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Didn't know what that was till the middle of last year.
Yeah, whatever that is. We spent
Yes.
time talking about that injury after a game for about half an hour trying to get the idea what it was and how long it takes to recover from it. Well, we heard varying definitions, as much as a whole year to recover from it to sometime less. So it's not something that it's not something one should take for granted. It's an interesting
Yeah.
and time consuming injury.
Well, I hope it's fully recovered and he can participate fully in training camp when it begins and show what he can do.
Well, I want to have you on again so that we can predict the Grey Cup, but we'll wait to do that a couple of weeks into the season, so that
Sure.
when you say Calgary, people will believe you.
Yeah. Well, we'll watch the standings, see what happens there. So yeah, but, look forward to it.
Hey, how are you doing this year? What are you doing? Let the people know how they can check what you're. I follow you on Facebook. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing so people can follow you.
Yeah, got a few feeds. They're CFL centered, but more on the Calgary Stampeders. At Mark on Football, that's the Twitter feed. Put a lot of stuff on there, and Facebook, Mark Steven Sports Broadcaster. So that's what I put on there.
Yeah,
So
those are the ones that I follow.
put a lot of Stampeder stuff, mostly Stampeder stuff, but not exclusively Stampeder stuff on there.
I'm so grateful that you're wearing the hat because I wouldn't have recognized you.
Oh, yeah. Needed it today. My gosh, it was blazing hot here. Wow. It
Was
was
it?
really tough.
It was pretty warm
Yeah.
here.
About 29 degrees and, got that turf out there. It bounces off. So it's pretty hard for the players today. So.
Absolutely. David, you got a final word?
No, I mean I mean obviously always great to get that West perspective because we obviously don't always get it, so it's always great to have it. And yeah, can't wait for those battles to start because I know the players, talking to some of the players today, they're itching away to have some meaningful games come about.
Well, there's one here pretty quick, so have to get on the field. We're in Toronto, August 25th. It's a Friday night, I think it is, and then Hamilton, September 30th. So be out there, not too far away.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, for doing this.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Anytime.
And David, of course, as always, thanks for doing this.
No problem, Frank.
Okay, for Mark Steven and David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci 1040 on YouTube. Subscribe and check out all the stuff that we do. Thanks for watching, everybody.